The glass was cold against Ethan's forehead. He stood outside the toy store, breathing small clouds into the winter air, his eyes fixed on a single box displayed behind the window. A bright red fire truck with a silver ladder, lights that blinked, a sticker that said it made real siren sounds. He had stared at it so long that the rest of the world blurred around him. He wanted that truck more than anything else in the world. It wasn't because he liked toys more than other kids. It wasn't because it was Christmas Eve and the whole town was decorated with lights and plastic snowflakes. It was because of what his father had said that morning, sitting on the edge of the motel bed with a tired smile. "Next week, buddy, I swear, I'll get it for you. The Christmas gift you deserve. Just need a few hours to take care of something." Ethan believed him. He always believed him. So when his father parked the old blue car beside the toy store, Ethan didn't question it. He didn't ask why his father looked over his shoulder more than usual. He didn't ask why his father pulled his hood low or why his hands shook when he said, "Wait right here. Don't move. I'll be back quick." Mark touched his hair, forced a smile, and drove off. That was 4 hours ago. Now the fire truck's reflection shone across Ethan's face as the store lights flickered inside. Employees were starting to clean up. Parents hurried out with last-minute gifts. Some gave Ethan confused looks. Others ignored him completely. He tightened his thin jacket around himself. The cold had already settled deep in his fingers. His sneakers were damp from the melting snow. His stomach hurt in that way he knew well. Empty, but pretending not to be. A woman passed by with her son who laughed as he held a huge stuffed bear. Ethan watched them disappear down the sidewalk. A sharp gust of wind made him shiver. He whispered to himself, "Come on, Dad. Please come back." He didn't want to think about the possibility that tonight would be like the other nights when his dad disappeared for hours or days, or until they had to leave town completely. He didn't want to believe his father had left him again. He hugged his backpack closer, all he owned inside, a t-shirt, socks, and a small plastic dinosaur missing its tail. The store lights suddenly blinked and dimmed. A voice from inside called, "Closing in 15 minutes." Ethan stepped back from the glass. His breath shook. He looked both ways down the street. No sign of the old blue car. No sign of Mark. Only quiet. Only cold. Only the sinking feeling that he had been left behind. He sat down on the curb, pulling his knees to his chest. He tried not to cry. Crying didn't help. Crying never changed anything. Then he heard something different. A deep rumble at first, low, distant. It grew louder. Not cars, engines, heavy ones. Ethan lifted his head. A group of motorcycles turned the corner, their headlights bright in the early darkness. The sound filled the street, echoing against the buildings. People looked. Some stepped aside. Some stared with caution. There were at least 8 bikers, tall men in denim and leather, patches on their jackets, boots heavy on the pavement. They parked in a straight line across the curb near the toy store, shutting their engines off one by one. The silence afterward felt even heavier. Ethan didn't move. One rider took off his helmet. He had dark hair pulled back, strong shoulders, and a calm expression that didn't match the size of his bike. A leather cut rested over a gray hoodie. The patch on the front said, "President Jax." He scanned the area with steady eyes. The kind of eyes that missed nothing. When he saw Ethan sitting alone by the store window, he paused. He walked toward him, boots crunching lightly on the thin layer of snow. He crouched down, keeping a respectful distance. "It's cold out here," Jax said. Ethan tensed. "I'm fine." Jax nodded, not pushing. His voice stayed gentle. "You waiting for someone?" Ethan swallowed. "My dad." "He inside the store?" Ethan shook his head. "He left. Said he'd be right back." "How long ago?" Ethan's voice cracked. "Since it was still bright." Jax's gaze shifted to the dark sky. "You eaten anything today?" he asked. Ethan hesitated. "I had chips at the gas station." "That all?" A small nod. Jax looked back at the row of bikes. The others were watching quietly, but no one came closer. You like that fire truck? Jax asked, tilting his head toward the store window. Ethan blinked. Yeah. It's a good one, Jax said. My brother had one when we were kids. Ethan looked down at his shoes. My dad said he was going to get it, he whispered. He said this Christmas would be different. Jax's jaw tightened slightly. What's your name? He asked. Ethan. Well, Ethan, I'm Jax. Ethan nodded but didn't speak. Jax stood and offered a hand. Come on, he said. Let's get you warm. The coffee shop's open. We can sit inside while we figure things out. Ethan backed up immediately. No, I'm not supposed to leave. Your dad told you that? Yes. And do you think he's coming back soon? Ethan didn't answer. Jax crouched again, softer this time. We're not taking you anywhere far, he said. Just over there where it's warm. We'll sit by the window so you can see if he drives up, but you can't stay freezing on the sidewalk. Ethan looked at the coffee shop, then at the street, then at Jax. Are you bad people? He asked. My dad says bikers are trouble. Jax gave a small, honest shrug. Some are. Some aren't, he said. But tonight, we're the ones who aren't leaving a kid alone in the cold. Ethan's eyes stung, but he nodded slowly. Jax held out his hand again. Ethan reached for it, and for the first time that night, he felt a little less alone. The warmth inside the coffee shop hit Ethan instantly. The smell of chocolate and cinnamon drifted through the air. A Christmas song played softly. People stared as Jax walked in with a small boy holding his hand. But no one said anything. The bikers followed, filling the space with their heavy boots and quiet presence. Jax ordered a hot chocolate and a grilled cheese for Ethan without asking what he wanted. Ethan didn't protest. When the food arrived, he wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the heat soak into his fingers. He took small sips at first, then bigger ones. Jax sat across from him. Ethan, he said gently, I need to call the police. Not to get you in trouble, but because someone has to know you're here. Ethan stiffened. No police, he whispered. My dad said it makes things worse. Jax leaned forward. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. But you're alone and someone needs to look out for you. I'll stay right here when they come. You won't be by yourself. Ethan looked terrified, but he nodded. Jax made the call. When officers Ruiz and Daniels arrived, they asked Ethan simple questions. His name, his father's name, where he lived last. When Ruiz heard the surname, Reeves, her expression changed. She stepped aside, radioed dispatch, and when she came back, she kneeled to Ethan's level. Ethan, we've been looking for your dad. Ethan's heart sank. He's not in trouble, is he? Ethan whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Jax. There's one shelter bed available, she said, but it's not ideal, and he clearly trusts you. Ethan grabbed Jax's vest, shaking. Don't make me go somewhere else, he begged. Please, I don't know them. I don't want to go. Jax looked at Ruiz. Let him stay with us tonight, he said. One night. Warm bed, food supervised. Ruiz hesitated. Then she nodded. All right, but I'll check on him in the morning. Ethan exhaled shakily, relief flooding his face. He reached for Jax's hand again as they left the coffee shop. Outside, snowflakes drifted softly. Jax put a helmet on him, lifted him onto the back of the big black motorcycle and said, Hold on tight. Ethan did. As they rode toward the clubhouse, only surrounded by bikers who had decided, without being asked, to protect the boy, Ethan felt something he didn't recognize at first. Safety. He rested his cheek against Jax's back. He didn't know it yet, but the moment those engines rumbled away from the toy store, his life had changed forever. And the people who wanted his father were already coming for him next. The ride to the clubhouse felt longer than it was. Ethan held on to Jax's vest with both hands, his knuckles white under the streetlights. The cold air stung his cheeks, but the warmth from Jax's back and the steady vibration of the bike made him feel strangely calm. He had never been on a motorcycle before, He had never had anyone tell him, "Hold on, I've got you," and actually believe it. They left the busier streets behind. Stores disappeared. Houses thinned out. After a few turns, the bikes rolled into an industrial area with old buildings and warehouses. Up ahead, a tall gate came into view, flanked by a chain-link fence, and a worn metal sign that now carried a newer one over it. Steel Guardians, MC. One of the bikers rode ahead and punched a code into the keypad. The gate slid open slowly. The line of bikes rolled inside like it was something they had done 1,000 times. Ethan clung tighter. Jax reached back with one hand and squeezed Ethan's wrist gently. "You're good," he said over his shoulder. "We're home." Home. The word felt too big for Ethan, but he held on to it anyway. The bikes parked in neat rows in the yard. Engines cut off, leaving a heavy silence. A few weak exterior lights cast a glow over the cracked concrete and oil stains. Jack swung his leg off the bike and turned around to help Ethan down. "You okay?" he asked. Ethan nodded, though his legs shook a little when they hit the ground. Another biker walked over and opened a side compartment, pulling out a medium-sized helmet. "We'll get you something that fits better later," the man said. For now, it did the job. Ethan managed a small smile. "Thank you." The biker jabbed a thumb at his own chest. "Name's Tank," he said. "I cook a mean grilled cheese and argue with everybody. You'll get used to it." That actually pulled a tiny laugh out of Ethan. Jax motioned him toward the main door. The clubhouse door was heavy metal painted dark. A wooden emblem hung above it, a shield with a wheel and wings. Someone had wrapped a cheap string of Christmas lights around it. Half the bulbs had burned out. Inside, the clubhouse surprised Ethan. He had expected something messy and scary like the places his father dragged him through sometimes. Instead, the main room was big but organized. Tables, chairs, a long bar on one side that was currently empty, a worn couch, a TV mounted in the corner, a bulletin board with notes and printed schedules. A small artificial Christmas tree stood in the corner decorated with mismatched ornaments. Under it, someone had placed a few wrapped boxes. It didn't look like a gang hideout. It looked lived in. A brown dog with one floppy ear came trotting up, nails clicking on the floor. He sniffed Ethan eagerly, tail wagging like crazy. "Hey," Ethan said softly, reaching out. The dog licked his hand once and leaned against his leg like they had known each other for years. "That's Diesel," Tank said, closing the door behind them. "He thinks he owns the place." Diesel nudged Ethan's hand as if to confirm it. "Come on," Jack said. "I'll show you where you'll sleep." They went up a set of metal stairs that creaked under their weight. On the second floor, a hallway stretched out with doors on each side. "This used to be an office building," Jax explained. "We remodeled. Some of us live here full-time. Others just crash when they need to." He stopped at a room with the door halfway open. Inside, there was a single bed with a plain frame, a clean mattress, folded sheets, a small dresser, and a chair near the window. A narrow radiator hissed softly under the sill. "It's not fancy," Jack said, "but it's yours tonight." Ethan stepped inside slowly, almost afraid he would be told to step back out. "I get my own room?" he asked. "Yeah," Jack said. "You lock the door from the inside if you want. Bathroom is down the hall. Tank's in the next room if you need something. I'll be upstairs." Ethan put his backpack on the floor near the bed. It looked very small in the corner. He ran his hand along the blanket. "It's soft," he said. "Better than the motel?" Jax asked. Ethan nodded. "We never have this much space." Jax glanced at his watch. "The social worker will be here soon," he said. "She has to make sure this place is okay for you." Ethan's stomach tightened again. "Does she take kids away?" he asked quietly. "Sometimes," Jack said, "when they're not safe. But you're not going anywhere tonight. You're staying here. I already told her that." Ethan looked at him, searching his face. "You're sure?" Ethan asked. "Yeah," Jack said. "I gave my word." Diesel trotted into the room and jumped onto the floor beside the bed, circling twice before settling down. "He's staying here too." Tank said from the doorway. Guard duty. Ethan smiled for real now. Thank you, he whispered. All right, Jack said. I'm going downstairs to wait for her. You can rest a bit if you want, or just sit with Diesel. He's good company. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. His body felt heavy, but his mind was awake. Don't close the door all the way, he said quickly. I won't, Jack said. He left the door open just enough for light and sound to reach in. For a few minutes, Ethan just sat there. He listened to the muffled voices downstairs, the clink of glasses being moved, the low sound of boots on wood. Diesel's breathing was steady. He had never felt this kind of quiet before, the kind that wasn't filled with tension or waiting for someone to explode. He lay back all the way, staring at the ceiling. He didn't notice when his eyes closed. A knock on the front door woke him later. He sat up fast, heart pounding. Diesel's ears perked up. The dog jumped to his feet and trotted to the hallway, glancing back as if asking Ethan to follow. Ethan stepped into the hall. He could hear voices below. Jackson Miller, a woman's voice called. Karen Lewis, Family Services. This way, Jax answered. Ethan crept down the stairs slowly, staying near the wall. From the bottom step he saw her clearly, a woman in her 40s with a long coat and a clipboard. Her dark hair was pulled back and her expression was serious but not cold. Officer Ruiz stood beside her, arms crossed. This is the main room, Jax said. Kitchen's in the back, bars closed and locked. No drugs, no guns lying around. You can check whatever you need. I will, Karen said. Her eyes moved over the tree, the tables, the couches, the sign on the wall with the club's logo. Then she looked at Jax's cut, the patches, the word President. I know your club, she said. You do toy drives and blanket runs every December. We try, Jax said. You also have a reputation for fights, she added. We also have a reputation for fixing bikes for half the price of anyone else in town, Tank said from near the doorway. Karen ignored that. I'm not here for your club, she said to Jax. I'm here for the boy. Ethan stiffened. Karen turned toward the stairs. That's him, Jax said quietly. Ethan. Her expression softened a little. Hi, Ethan, she said. Can I come up? He hesitated, then nodded. She walked up the stairs, taking them slowly so she wouldn't tower over him. Up close, she smelled faintly of coffee and cold air. You had a long day, she said. I'm sorry you went through that. Ethan shrugged one shoulder. I'm used to it, he said. Karen's eyes flickered. That's not something an 8-year-old should say, she replied. She glanced into his room, checked the bed, the window, the heater. This room is just for him? She asked Jax. Yes, Jax said. Door locks from inside. Diesel's staying with him. Karen nodded once and wrote something on her clipboard. Bathroom? She asked. Down the hall, Jax said. She stepped in, opened the door, and checked. Towels hung neatly. Soap sat by the sink. It was basic, but clean. Any weapons on this floor? She asked. No, Jax said. Alcohol? She asked. Downstairs at the bar, Jax answered, which is locked. Karen turned back to Ethan. How do you feel here? She asked. Safe? Scared? Ethan looked at Jax, then at Diesel, then at the small room. I feel less scared than outside, he said honestly. Karen wrote again. Do you want to stay here tonight? She asked. Ethan nodded fast. Yes, please. Karen took a slow breath. All right, she said. Then here's what's going to happen. She turned to Jax. I'm approving temporary placement under your supervision until morning, she said. I'll come back at 8 a.m. for follow-up. You don't leave the building with him. You don't let anyone in that you don't know. If something strange happens, you call the police. Understood, Jax said. Ruiz spoke up. And remember, she added, Mark Reeves has active warrants. If he shows up here, you call us. You do not try to handle him alone. Ethan flinched at his father's name. Karen noticed. Ethan? she said gently. Your dad is in trouble with some dangerous people, and with the law. That does not mean you are in trouble. You are not responsible for his choices. Ethan stared at the floor. Then why do I feel like I am? He whispered. No one answered right away. Finally, Jack said quietly, because he kept putting you in the middle. That stops now. Karen gave him a brief, approving look, then headed back down the stairs. Get some sleep, Ruiz told Ethan. We'll be watching outside. She left with Karen. The front door shut. The lock turned. Silence settled again. Tank exhaled loudly. Well, that went better than expected, he muttered. Jack started toward the stairs, then turned back. You need anything else? He asked Ethan. The boy shook his head. Can you leave the door like before? Ethan asked. Not all the way open, not all the way closed. Yeah, Jack said. We can do that. He walked down the hall, checked the bathroom one more time, then returned to his own floor above. Ethan went back into the room. Diesel hopped onto the floor beside the bed and curled up. Ethan lay down, pulling the blanket up to his chin. For a few minutes, his mind whirled. Thoughts of his father, the toy store, the two officers. The word warrants echoed in his head. He turned on his side and looked at Diesel. Do you think he's okay? Ethan whispered. The dog didn't answer, of course. But he scooted closer until his warm body pressed against the side of the bed. Ethan placed his hand on Diesel's head. I hope so, he said. This time, when his eyes closed, he slept all the way until morning. A pale light slipped through the thin curtains. Ethan woke slowly, blinking at the ceiling. For a moment he forgot where he was and reached out blindly for the edge of a car seat or the rough motel blanket. His hand touched a smooth wall instead. Then Diesel's tail thumped against the floor twice. Right. He was in the bikers' clubhouse. He sat up and rubbed his eyes. The room was quiet. The hallway outside, too. No shouting, no doors slamming. He slid off the bed and walked to the window. He lifted one corner of the blind. The street was still. A few cars passed in the distance. Snow covered the sidewalks in thin patches. Then he saw them. Two dark cars parked near the far corner of the block. Not police cars. No markings. Tinted windows. They weren't moving. Ethan's chest tightened. He let the blind fall back into place and stepped away from the window. Jax? He called softly into the hallway. No answer. He walked out of the room, Diesel at his heels, and went downstairs. He found Jax and Tank already in the main room, both holding mugs of coffee, both looking more awake than he felt. You're up early, Tank said. I saw cars, Ethan replied, walking toward them. Outside. Jax straightened. How many? He asked. 2, Ethan said. Dark, they were just sitting there. Tank glanced at Jax. Same ones from last night? He asked. Could be, Jax said. He walked to the window and moved the curtain just enough to peek out. His face hardened. Yeah, he said. Same plates. Ethan hugged his arms around himself. Are they here for me? He asked. Jax let the curtain drop. They're here because of your dad, he said. You're not the reason. You're just the easiest way for them to hurt him. The boy swallowed. That sounds like I am the reason, he whispered. You're not, Jax repeated. You didn't choose any of this. They did. He did. Not you. Tank set his coffee down and went to the back door. I'll check the alley, he said. Make sure we're not boxed in. Ethan watched him go, then looked back at Jax. What happens now? Ethan asked. Jax took a slow breath. Now? We wait for Karen and Officer Ruiz to get here, he said. We tell them everything and we don't let you out of our sight. Ethan nodded, but his stomach knotted. He looked up at the small Christmas tree in the corner. The lights weren't on yet. The fake branches drooped a little. Is it really Christmas Eve? He asked. Yeah, Jack said. Feels weird, Ethan murmured. I thought Christmas would be different. Jax followed his gaze to the tree. Sometimes it is, he said. Sometimes it isn't. But we're not done with this one yet. A knock sounded at the front door. 3 short, firm taps. Ethan jumped. Jax raised a hand, signaling him to stay put, and walked toward the door. "Who is it?" he called. "Karen Lewis," came the answer. "And Officer Ruiz. We're here to check on Ethan." Jax opened the door. They stepped inside, bringing a rush of cold air with them. "Any problems during the night?" Karen asked. Jax nodded toward the window. "Depends on what you call a problem," he said. "Because those cars haven't moved since dawn." Ruiz went straight to the window and glanced out. Her jaw clenched when she recognized the vehicles. "Same as yesterday," she confirmed. "They're not subtle." Ethan stood by the table, looking small in one of Tank's oversized t-shirts and his own jeans. Karen walked over to him. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Scared," he answered honestly. "But less cold." Karen gave a tiny smile. "That's something." She reopened her folder and took out a sheet of paper. "We got more information on your father overnight," she said. "About who's after him, and what he's done." Ethan's heart pounded. "Is he in jail?" he asked. "Not yet," she said. "He's still running, but someone sent a message to our office early this morning." She held the paper up slightly. "The message said," she read, "tell them the club was right not to help. They'll come for the boy next because I ran. Protect him. Don't let them use him the way they wanted to use me." Ethan stared at her. "Who sent that?" Jax asked. "We don't know for sure," Karen said. "But it came from a contact who claims to have seen Mark recently. It sounds like something a desperate man would say." Ethan's throat tightened. "So he doesn't want them to find me," Ethan said. "No," Karen said. "He wants you as far away from them as possible." Ethan blinked hard. "And are they going to come here?" he asked. Ruiz let the curtain fall back into place. "They already did," she said. "Those cars outside? They're not just sightseeing." Silence settled over the room again. Karen closed the folder. "I need to decide if you should stay here for more than just last night," she said. "Because this is no longer a simple case of a missing parent. This is criminal debt, threats, out-of-town men watching the building." Ethan felt his stomach twist. "Are you going to take me away?" he whispered. Karen looked at him, then at Jax. "That depends," she said. "On what?" Ethan asked. "On whether this is the safest place for you," she said. "Or whether we put you somewhere else that might not have men outside the door, but also might not have anyone inside who would fight for you." Her eyes lingered on Jax when she said that. Jax held her gaze. "You know my answer," he said. "I do," she replied. She looked at Ethan again. "I'll need to make that decision soon," she said. "Very soon." Ethan swallowed. Outside, the dark cars waited. Inside, the boy stood between a system that didn't always work, and a group of bikers who had already decided that, whether anyone liked it or not, he was one of theirs now. And somewhere far from that room, his father was running out of places to hide. The real storm had not started yet, but it was close. Morning came slowly inside the Steel Guardians clubhouse. The lights were still low, the heater hummed quietly, and Diesel thumped his tail against the floor as Ethan walked down the stairs. He wasn't used to waking up somewhere safe, not used to warm air, or people talking calmly over coffee, or footsteps that didn't mean danger. But that morning, as he stood halfway down the staircase, he felt something shift in the room. Jax and Tank were by the window. They weren't talking. They weren't drinking coffee. They were staring outside with their shoulders tense. Ethan froze. "Jax?" he called softly. Both men turned toward him. Jax motioned him down with a slow hand. "Come here." Ethan walked down the last few steps, Diesel sticking close. He tried to follow Jax's gaze through the window, but Tank stepped in front of him. "Don't worry about it yet," Tank said. But he didn't sound convincing. Ethan's stomach tightened. "The cars are still there, aren't they?" Jax didn't lie. He rarely did. "Yes," he said. They're still there. Ethan walked closer and Tank sighed, finally moving aside to let him look. 2 dark sedans sat at the far end of the block. Same as last night. Same tinted windows. Same stillness. No one got out. No one went in. They just waited. Ethan swallowed. They're watching us, he whispered. They're watching everything, Jax corrected. But as long as they stay out there, we handle it. Tank rubbed the back of his neck. I don't like how quiet they are. Quiet is better than kicking down the door, Jax said. Ethan didn't answer. He hugged his elbows tightly. Diesel pressed against his leg, sensing the fear. A knock echoed suddenly from the back hallway. Light, hesitant. Ethan jumped. Tank spun around fast. It's just me, a voice called. Ruiz stepped inside from the back alley entrance. She brushed snow off her shoulders and locked the door behind her. You have company across the street, she said. 2 unmarked cars. No plates on record. We saw, Tank muttered. We're trying to track down what they want, and whether they're connected to Mark Reeves or to someone bigger. They're here for Ethan, Jax said flatly. Ruiz sighed. It's leaning that way. Ethan's chest tightened again. Ruiz knelt down in front of him. Ethan, listen. We're doing everything we can to keep you safe. Ethan nodded, but the fear didn't ease. When Karen gets here, Ruiz said, we'll talk options. You might not be able to stay in one place too long. Ethan stared at the floor. I don't want to leave. Jax glanced at Ruiz sharply. He's staying here until we know more. Ruiz stood up. I don't make the rules. Karen does, and the judge does. Tank scoffed. Judges don't know what's going on out there. And this place isn't exactly low profile, Ruiz shot back. If they want to grab him, they won't hesitate. Let them try, Tank murmured. Ruiz looked at Jax. We will take turns watching the front. You watch the back. No one goes out alone. Jax nodded. Agreed. Before Ruiz could say more, a faint noise came from the front door, a soft rattle on the metal handle. Ethan froze. Tank walked toward it slowly. Anyone expecting guests? No, Jax said, moving like a shadow behind him. Ruiz stepped to the side, hand on her firearm. Don't open it. Ask first. Tank approached the door, keeping his body angled away. He pressed his ear against the metal. Silence. Then, a heavy bang. Ethan jumped so hard he nearly fell backward. Diesel growled deeply. Another bang. Louder. Open the door, Jax Miller. The voice was deep and angry. Male. No attempt to hide. Ethan felt his heart slam against his ribs. Tank muttered a curse. Ruiz drew her weapon fully. Jax stepped forward and put one hand on the door, not to open it but to make sure it stayed closed. Who is it? Jax called. You know who, the voice growled. Jax didn't recognize the voice, but the implication was enough. Tank leaned in close. They're not bluffing. A third bang shook the hinges. Bring out the boy! The room exploded with motion. Ethan gasped and backed away. Diesel barked furiously. Tank moved to shield Ethan with his whole body. Ruiz raised her pistol and aimed at the door. Jax stayed right where he was, voice steady but cold. This is private property, he said. You don't yell demands through our door. You have something that belongs to us, the man yelled. You mean the boy, Jax said. Tank snarled. He's not theirs. Ethan clutched Diesel's collar, shaking. Ruiz shouted, Step away from the door now or I will call backup. The man outside laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. We saw the kid yesterday, he said, and we'll take him one way or another. You think hiding him in here does anything? Ethan felt like the floor dropped under him. Tank shouted, Jax, we can't let them. I know, Jax snapped. Ruiz pressed her shoulder against the wall beside the door. Open it 2 inches, she whispered. We need eyes. Too risky, Jax muttered, but she insisted. We need to identify them, or they'll deny everything. Jax took a breath. Then he turned the lock quietly and cracked the door 1/2 inch. The man outside shoved instantly. Jack slammed his shoulder into the door to keep it from opening. A rough voice shouted, "Give us the boy, Jax." Ruiz leaned into the crack, seeing enough to catch a face. Short beard, shaved head, scar across one cheek. She recognized him instantly. "Close affiliate of Leon Vargas," she whispered. "This is worse than we thought." Tank's jaw dropped. "Vargas? You mean—" "Yes," Ruiz said sharply. "Mark Reeves stole something from him 6 months ago. Something important." Ethan's heart hammered so hard he couldn't breathe. "What did he steal?" Ethan choked out. Ruiz didn't answer, because the door shook again with a violent impact. Another voice joined outside. "You have 10 seconds before we break this door." Jax looked at Tank. "Get the kid upstairs." Tank grabbed Ethan under his arms and lifted him to his feet. "Come on." Ethan's legs barely worked. Diesel ran ahead, barking. Up the stairs they ran, Ethan stumbling as Tank pushed him forward. "Go, go!" Tank shouted. Ethan reached the top landing and turned back just once. Jack stood at the door, bracing it with his shoulder, eyes burning with fury. Ruiz stood beside him with her weapon drawn, shouting into her radio. "Dispatch, multiple hostile suspects at Steel Guardian's clubhouse, request immediate backup." Down below, another slam hit the metal door. Then another, each one harder than the last. Tank shoved Ethan toward his room. "In here." Ethan stumbled inside, grabbed Diesel and backed into a corner. Tank shut the door, not fully, just enough to hide Ethan but still here. Downstairs, Jack shouted, "You want the boy? You go through me." Another deep laugh came from outside. "Oh, we plan to." The next hit shook the entire wall. Ethan covered his ears. Diesel whimpered beside him. He could hear Ruiz shouting commands, Jax cursing, Tank moving fast. Another blow, another. Then, sirens, loud, close. The banging stopped instantly. Ruiz yelled, "They're running!" Boots pounded outside. Engines roared. Tires screeched. Tank burst into Ethan's room. "It's okay," he said, breathless. "They're gone. Police are outside." Ethan collapsed into him, shaking uncontrollably. Tank knelt and wrapped his arms around the boy's shoulders. "I got you," Tank murmured. "We got you." Jax appeared in the doorway seconds later, chest heaving, hair falling out of its tie, face flushed with fury. "You all right?" he asked. Ethan nodded, barely. Jax crouched down and placed a steady hand on his back. "That," Jax said, voice low and deadly calm, "was a warning." Ruiz came up behind him, her face pale. "No," she said. "It wasn't a warning." Everyone looked at her. "It was a promise," she continued. "They're coming back." Ethan's breath hitched. Tank looked at Jax. "What do we do now?" Jax stood slowly, eyes dark. "We prepare," he said. "And we don't let this kid out of our sight for 1 second." He looked at Ethan again. "But first, we tell him the truth." Ethan wiped his tears. "The truth about what?" Jax exchanged a long, heavy look with Ruiz. She stepped forward. "Ethan, the men outside?" She said gently. "They're after you because of something your father did." Ethan swallowed hard. What did he do?" Ruiz took a breath. "He didn't just owe money," she said. "He didn't just run away." She paused, then delivered the truth that would change everything. "Your father stole from a criminal who doesn't forgive, and he didn't steal money. He stole evidence, something that man desperately wants back." Ethan stared at her, barely breathing. "And now," she finished quietly, "they think your father gave it to you." The room felt smaller. The world felt colder. Ethan pressed his face into Diesel's fur. Jack stepped forward and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're safe here," he said. "We're not letting anyone take you." Ethan nodded, tears falling silently. Outside, police cars surrounded the clubhouse. Inside, the bikers prepared for war. And far away, somewhere in the shadows, Mark Reeves was running out of time. The police cars outside the clubhouse stayed parked long after the men in the unmarked sedans had vanished. Lights flashed in the cold morning air, painting the building in red and blue streaks. Officers walked the perimeter. Ruiz stood at the door giving statements. Tank paced the floor like a caged bull. Jax didn't move at all. He stayed at the foot of the stairs, arms crossed, watching Ethan sit on the couch wrapped in a blanket, Diesel's head resting on the boy's lap. Ethan wasn't crying anymore, but he wasn't calm either. He stared straight ahead, eyes wide, breathing shallow like someone waiting for something bad to happen again. Karen Lewis arrived minutes later, coat still dusted with snow. The moment she stepped inside, she froze at the sight of the dented metal door. "Tell me this didn't just happen," she whispered. Ruiz turned toward her. "It did." Karen hurried to Ethan. "Sweetheart, are you hurt?" "No," he said. His voice was so small it barely registered. "But they knew my name." Karen closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, her expression had changed from gentle concern to professional urgency. "Jax," she said, "we can't keep him here anymore. This environment is a target." Ethan jolted. "No, don't take me away." Karen raised both hands. "I didn't say I was removing you yet, but we need to understand exactly what is happening." Ruiz stepped closer. "We have new information." "About his father." Jax's jaw tightened. "Let's hear it." Ruiz sighed. "Last night one of our informants contacted me. He said Mark Reeves was seen in a warehouse district 2 towns over. He was running, hurt, looked scared out of his mind." Ethan's fingers dug into Diesel's fur. "Was he alive?" he asked. "Yes," Ruiz answered. "Alive. But desperate." Tank crossed his arms. "Why is he running? What did he actually steal?" Ruiz exchanged a heavy look with Karen before answering. "Mark Reeves worked for Leon Vargas." The entire room went still. Even Ethan recognized the name. He had heard his father whisper it during phone calls he wasn't supposed to hear, always in a tone of fear. Jax cursed under his breath. "Vargas doesn't let anyone walk away." Ruiz nodded. 6 months ago, Mark disappeared after stealing something from him. Something Vargas wants back at any cost. "What?" Tank asked. "Money? Drugs?" "No," Ruiz said quietly. "A memory card. With evidence. Names, numbers, bank accounts, locations, shipments, all tied to Vargas's operations. Enough to send him away for life." Jax blinked. "You're telling me Ethan's dad stole the most dangerous thing possible?" "Yes," Ruiz said, "and kept it hidden." Ethan's face drained of color. "My dad wouldn't steal something like that," he whispered. Ruiz crouched down in front of him. "Ethan, do you remember your dad telling you to keep something safe or not to open something, or to hide something for him?" Ethan shook his head hard. "No, he didn't give me anything. He didn't tell me anything." Karen touched his shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're just trying to understand." "He didn't give me anything," Ethan insisted. "I swear." Tank exhaled. "Then where is it?" Ruiz stood again. "That's the problem. Vargas thinks Mark gave it to the boy. They think Ethan knows where it is, that's why they want him." Ethan hugged himself tightly. "I don't know anything," he whispered. Jax looked at Ruiz. "What about Mark now? Why doesn't he give them what they want?" "Because he can't," Ruiz said. "What do you mean he can't?" Tank demanded. Ruiz took a deep breath. "Because the informant said Mark lost the card while running from Vargas's men 2 nights ago." Everyone froze. Ethan's face twisted. "Lost it? Where?" "We don't know," Ruiz admitted. "Could be anywhere in the woods near the river, could be picked up by anyone. Mark had no way to get it back, and now Vargas thinks he handed it off to his son." Ethan shook his head again and again. No, I didn't see anything. I didn't." Jax knelt beside him. "Look at me." Ethan lifted his eyes, wet but determined. "You don't have it," Jax said. "I know that. You know that. And Vargas will figure it out eventually." Eventually, Ethan whispered. Jax placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. We're going to protect you until then. Karen spoke softly. Jax, you can't promise that. The hell I can't, he snapped. Ruiz stepped in. Listen, Vargas will come back, and next time, it won't be just two men. A lump formed in Ethan's throat. So what do we do? He asked. Karen inhaled deeply. First, you stay inside. All day, all night, no exceptions. Tank nodded. Easy. He doesn't leave our sight. Second, Karen continued, we track Mark. If he's alive, he might still help us. Ethan leaned forward. He sent a message, didn't he? You said someone sent a message. Ruiz pulled out her phone. Early this morning, yes. Sent to my station inbox. It was short. She opened the text and read it aloud. Tell Ethan I'm sorry. Tell him I tried. Tell him they'll use him to hurt me. Don't let them. Ethan pressed both hands to his face and sobbed. Diesel whined and nudged him. Jax put an arm around his back. Karen's eyes softened. Ethan, I know this hurts. But your father is trying to protect you even if he made terrible decisions. Ethan coughed through tears. He didn't come back for me. He left me at the toy store. Karen blinked. What toy store? Yesterday. Ethan whispered. He said he'd get me a Christmas present. He drove away. He never came back. Ruiz asked gently, did he seem scared when he left you? Ethan nodded slowly. He kept looking over his shoulder, and he was shaking. Jax's jaw hardened. He didn't abandon you, kid. He was running from them. Ethan swallowed. Then why didn't he take me with him? Tank answered quietly. Because you slow down when you have someone to protect, especially a kid. Ethan lowered his head. Is he going to die? He asked. No one spoke. Karen finally said, we're going to do everything we can to find him before Vargas does. Ethan sniffed. I want him to be okay. We all do, Jax said. But now we need to make sure you're okay. Ruiz walked toward the window again. Back up left. The street is quiet for now, but we're not safe. So what's the plan? Tank asked. Ruiz thought for a moment. Tonight is the Christmas festival downtown. Crowded, music, lights, a lot of police presence. It might be a chance to move unseen if someone wants to blend in. Jax narrowed his eyes. You think Vargas's men will show up there? I think they'll show up anywhere we take the boy, Ruiz replied. But if Mark is alive and trying to meet his son, a crowded event is a good place to hide until the right moment. Ethan sat straighter. You think my dad will go to the festival? It's possible, Ruiz said. If he thinks it's the only chance to see you before Vargas catches him. Karen shook her head. I don't like this. No one likes it, Jax said. But it might be our only shot at finding him. Tank crossed his arms. So what, we take the kid into the biggest crowd of the year, when killers are hunting him? Ruiz answered calmly. With police on every corner, with bikers protecting him, with eyes everywhere, yes, it's the safest unsafe place we have. Karen exhaled shakily. I'll allow it under one condition. Ethan stays glued to Jax the entire time. Jax nodded once. He will. Ethan's voice trembled. Are they going to hurt my dad? Ruiz hesitated. They want him alive until they get what they lost. After that, I don't know. Ethan wiped his face. Then we have to find him. Jax placed a steady hand on his shoulder. We will. Tank added a small smile. And we'll get you that fire truck someday too. Despite everything, Ethan let out a tiny laugh. Karen checked her watch. The festival starts in a few hours. We should prepare. Ethan looked up. Will I be safe? Safer than here, Ruiz said. For the moment. Jax stood. Then we move at dusk. Tank slapped his hands together. I'll get the van ready. Diesel barked once as if volunteering too. Ethan took a deep breath and finally stood from the couch. He wasn't ready. He was terrified, but he trusted Jax more than he trusted anyone in his entire life. And somewhere in the snow-covered streets, his father was running out of places to hide. The festival would bring answers, or more danger, maybe both. As Jax looked out the window one last time, he whispered quietly, "Vargas wants a war? Fine. But he doesn't touch this kid." Ethan heard it, and for the first time that day, he felt the tiniest spark of hope. By late afternoon, the town no longer looked like the same place Ethan had arrived in. The main square glowed in the early dark. Strings of lights hung between lampposts. Vendors set up stands with hot chocolate, popcorn, and roasted nuts. A choir tested microphones near a small stage. In the center of it all stood the huge Christmas tree, covered in red and gold ornaments waiting for the official lighting. Ethan watched it all from the passenger seat of the Steel Guardian's van, hands clenched around the seatbelt. His stomach twisted so hard he thought he might throw up. Jack sat behind the wheel, eyes scanning the square even before they parked. Tank was in the back with two other bikers, all in their cuts, all unusually quiet. Diesel kept his head on Ethan's lap. Every time Ethan's breathing sped up, the dog nudged him gently. "Remember," Jack said, "we stay together. You don't step away from me, not for a second." Ethan nodded. "Okay. If you feel scared," Tank added, leaning between the seats, "you tell one of us. We leave. Doesn't matter what's going on. You say the word, we go." "Okay," Ethan repeated. He didn't say he already felt scared. That was obvious. They pulled into a side street and parked. A line of Steel Guardians bikes already waited there, polished and lined up like a row of black and chrome statues. Jax killed the engine and turned to Ethan. "You ready?" he asked. "No," Ethan answered honestly. Jax almost smiled. "Good, means you're paying attention. Stay close." They stepped out into the cold evening. The air smelled like sugar, pine, and exhaust. Children's laughter mixed with Christmas music. The mood was bright, but there was tension just under the surface, at least for the adults who knew what was really going on. Karen stood near the toy donation tent, clipboard in hand. When she saw Ethan step out of the van, she raised a hand. Ruiz, in uniform, moved along the perimeter of the square. She did not draw attention to herself, but her eyes never stopped moving. "Ethan, over here," Karen called gently. He walked to her, both hands gripping the back of Jax's vest. Diesel stayed glued to his side. "You're doing great," Karen said. "Just stay with them, all right? Have you ever been to a Christmas festival before?" Ethan shook his head. "No." "Then let's make this one count," Tank said, trying to lighten the mood. "We brought a lot of gifts. Somebody's got to help us hand them out." He gestured toward the tent the Steel Guardians had set up. Under it, boxes of wrapped toys were stacked in neat piles. "They're from you?" Ethan asked. "From us," Tank corrected, "including you now." A small line of kids was already forming near the edge of the bikes, pointing and whispering. Some parents looked wary of the bikers. Others smiled in recognition, clearly used to seeing them every year. Jack stepped closer to Ethan. "Remember," he said quietly, "if anyone calls your name from far away, you do not go. Even if they say they know your dad. Even if they say they're police but aren't wearing a uniform. You don't move unless I move." "Okay," Ethan said. He meant it. For the next hour, things felt almost normal. Children walked up to the Steel Guardian's tent. Tank handed out wrapped toys with exaggerated seriousness. One of the bikers pretended to flex and let kids feel his arm, making them laugh. Another let them sit on a parked bike for a few seconds, holding it steady while parents took pictures. Ethan stayed behind the table with Jax, sorting boxes by size and age group. It gave him something to do with his hands besides shake. "Is it always like this?" he asked. "Pretty much," Jax said. "Well, except for the part with dangerous men hunting people." Ethan gave a weak smile. He kept glancing around. Cars drove past the square. People walked by in heavy coats and hats. He looked for anything that felt wrong. A face too familiar. A car moving too slowly. A man standing alone and watching. He didn't see them. Not at first. Ruiz did. She was near the coffee stall when something prickled at the back of her neck. Years of patrol had trained her to trust that feeling. She turned her head and saw a man step into the edge of the square, medium height, dark jacket, baseball cap, hands in pockets. He scanned the area with quick, nervous movements. Two other men hovered farther back, near the entrance to the street. They weren't together, but they moved like they were aware of each other. And in the middle of them, about 20 feet away, Mark Reeves. He looked worse than the last time anyone had seen him. His face was bruised, one eye swollen, his jacket torn at the shoulder. He walked with a small limp, like his ribs hurt. His eyes moved frantically, searching. Ruiz's chest tightened. She spoke into her radio without taking her eyes off him. "Unit at the south side, be advised," she said under her breath. "We have visual on Mark Reeves, possible suspects behind him. Approaching town square." The answer crackled back. "Copy. Moving in." Mark took a few halting steps forward, hands slightly raised as if he needed to show he wasn't a threat. Ruiz watched the men behind him. They spread out, creating a loose triangle. Hunters. She looked toward the Steel Guardian's tent. Jax was there. Tank. Ethan. The kid's hood was up, but Ruiz would have recognized that small frame and cautious posture anywhere by now. Mark saw the bikes first. His whole body tensed. Then his eyes jumped to the boy standing behind the table. For a second, he simply froze. His lips moved. Ethan. Even from across the square, Ruiz saw the word break him. He took another step. At the tent, Ethan felt something. He didn't know if it was the cold, the noise, or something deeper. But something made him look up toward the side entrance of the square. He saw the man in the torn jacket. Messy hair, bruised face, eyes he knew better than any. "Dad," Ethan whispered. His heart slammed into his throat. Jax followed his gaze and saw Mark at the same moment. Everything inside him went tight. "Tank," Jax said sharply. 3 o'clock. We've got Reeves, and we've got shadows behind him. Tank's easy smile vanished. He moved to Ethan's left side, blocking half of him from view. Mark stumbled forward. "Ethan," he called, louder this time. Ethan stepped out from behind the table before he even realized it. Jax grabbed his shoulder immediately. "Don't move," Jax said, "not yet." "But that's my dad," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "He's hurt." "I know," Jax said. "Look behind him." Ethan blinked, forced his gaze past his father, and saw them. 2 men, watching, moving when Mark moved, closing in. He felt ice in his veins. "They followed him," Ethan whispered. "He brought them here." Tank grit his teeth, or they didn't give him a choice. Ruiz moved quickly now, weaving through the crowd, one hand near her holster, but not drawing yet. The last thing she needed was a panic before backup arrived. She approached the men from the side, pretending to walk toward the food stand. Her eyes never left their hands. Mark, desperate, ignored everything else. He took several unsteady steps toward the bikes. "Ethan," he shouted again. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." People began to notice. Some turned to look. Conversations quieted in pockets as parents pulled their children closer. Jack stepped out in front of the tent, placing himself between Ethan and the approaching men. "Mark," he called. "Stop right there." Mark flinched like a gun had gone off. He stopped a few yards away, chest heaving. Jax took 2 careful steps toward him. "You're dragging a storm with you," Jack said. "You know that?" Mark laughed, a broken sound. "The storm was already here. I just brought the lightning where everyone can see it." He looked over Jax's shoulder at Ethan. The boy stood half hidden behind Tank, tears already running down his face. "I'm sorry," Mark said again. "I never wanted this for you." One of the men behind him stepped closer now, impatience showing. "Mark," the man said flatly, "we didn't come all this way to listen to you cry. You know what we're here for?" Mark turned, anger flickering in his eyes for the first time. "You're not taking my son." The man smiled without warmth. You don't get to decide that. Ruiz stepped in now, badge visible. Police, she said. Hands where I can see them. The nearest man glanced at her, then at Jax, then at the crowd. He raised his hands, slowly. The other man did not. His hand dipped toward his jacket. Ruiz's voice sharpened. Don't. Parents began pulling children away in earnest now. The choir on stage fell silent. The event organizer fumbled with the microphone, trying to say something about staying calm, but his voice shook too much to help. Jax didn't take his eyes off the men. Tank, he said quietly. Line up the bikes. Tank nodded. Guardians. The nearby bikers moved at once. Some swung onto their motorcycles and rolled them forward, forming a curved barrier between the crowd and the approaching danger. Others stood shoulder to shoulder behind that wall of steel. Ethan stayed behind them, heart pounding so loud he could barely hear anything else. He watched his father stand there in the open between police, bikers, and the men who wanted him dead. The man closest to Mark dropped his hands. Enough of this, he muttered. He lunged. Toward Mark, not toward Ethan. He grabbed Mark by the front of his jacket and yanked him down. Mark stumbled, falling to his knees. Stop! Ethan screamed. The second man bolted sideways, trying to slip around the edges of the bike barrier. Left, Tank shouted. Two bikers blocked him, shoving him back. Ruiz drew her weapon fully now, aiming at the man holding Mark. Let him go, she yelled. The man laughed, tightening his grip. You won't shoot me in front of this many people, he said. You're not that brave. You'd be surprised, Ruiz shot back. The second man saw an opening and made a different choice. He dropped his center of gravity and tried to sprint toward the bikes, eyes locked on the small figure behind them. On Ethan. Jack saw it. Tank, he barked. On me. They moved as one. Tank threw himself into the gap, slamming his shoulder into the charging man's chest. They both went down hard. The man tried to reach into his jacket as he fell. Jax was there a second later, his boot kicking the man's arm away from his body before he could grab anything. The crowd started screaming now, panic breaking fully. Ruiz made a choice. She adjusted her aim, from Mark's attacker to the man on the ground, reaching again. Drop it, she shouted. He did not. There was no more time to wait. A single gunshot cracked through the square. Ethan's world exploded into sound and light. He flinched, dropping to a crouch. Diesel barked wildly, snapping at the air. For a few endless seconds, Ethan couldn't tell who had been hit. Voices overlapped. Weapon! Weapon! Get back! Stay down! He forced himself to look. The man on the ground wasn't reaching anymore. Ruiz stood above him, gun still trained, chest rising and falling fast. His hand lay open at his side. A small black pistol lay a few inches away, knocked free. He was wounded, not dead. He groaned and clutched his leg. Jax pressed his knee into the man's back and yanked his arms behind him. Tank, he barked. Zip tie. Tank tossed him one. Jax bound the man's wrists hard. The first attacker, the one still holding Mark, tried to use the chaos. He jerked Mark up by his collar and yanked him backward. Mark cried out, pain shooting through his side. Let him go, Ethan screamed again. The man dragged Mark a few steps away. Ruiz spun toward them. Don't you move! He kept going. Jax's head snapped up. Guardians, he shouted. Front! Every biker standing behind the line of motorcycles stepped forward at once, forming an even thicker wall. But the man wasn't going for Ethan now. He was trying to get Mark to the edge of the square, to the street, to a car that was already rolling slowly into place. Ruiz aimed, but Mark lurched in front of the man, blocking her clear shot. Don't, Ethan sobbed. Dad, don't. Mark twisted in the man's grip, gasping. If you shoot him, Mark rasped to the man, you lose your leverage. Leon will never forgive you. The attacker's jaw flexed. For a split second, his grip loosened, and Mark did something no one expected. He slammed his head backward into the man's face. Bone met bone. The man cursed, stumbling. Mark shoved himself free and fell to his knees again, groaning in pain. Mark, get down, Ruiz yelled. He tried. So did the attacker. They moved at the same time. Ruiz hesitated for the briefest heartbeat, not willing to risk hitting the wrong man. The attacker recovered faster. He raised his arm, not with a gun, but with a long, sharp knife he had pulled from his belt. He lunged toward Mark's chest. "No!" Ethan screamed. Jax moved without thinking. He sprinted out from behind the bike barrier, crossing the space in seconds. He hit the attacker from the side like a freight train, tackling him to the ground. The knife flew from the man's hand, skidding across the pavement. Tank grabbed it and kicked it far away. The attacker thrashed, but Jax pinned him easily, fury burning in his eyes. "You don't touch him," Jax growled. Ruiz rushed in, yelling, "Hands! Hands where I can see them!" Officers swarmed from the edges now, drawn by the gunshot and the screaming. They took over, pulling the attacker away from Jax, cuffing him, dragging him to the ground beside his wounded partner. The square was chaos. Children sobbed in their parents' arms. Vendors cowered behind their stalls. The choir huddled near the stage, eyes wide. Ethan didn't see any of them. He saw only his father. Mark was still on his knees. One arm clutched his side. His face was white with pain, sweat shining on his forehead despite the cold. Ethan broke away from Tank before anyone could stop him. "Dad!" He ran. Karen reached for him but missed by inches. "Ethan, wait!" He didn't. He skidded to a stop in front of Mark and dropped to the ground. "Are you okay?" Ethan cried. "Are you hurt? Are you—" Mark grabbed his hand. "Ethan," he breathed, voice rough. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Ethan said. "They didn't touch me." Jax didn't let them. Mark's eyes filled. Good. He coughed, grimacing in pain. Up close, Ethan saw the bruises more clearly. The split lip, the swelling around one eye, a dark patch under his jacket that might be blood. He swallowed. "Did they do this to you?" he whispered. Mark nodded once. "They wanted the card. They thought I gave it to you." "I don't have it," Ethan said quickly. "I don't know where it is." "I know," Mark said. "I know. I never gave it to you. I kept it. I thought I could bargain my way out. I was wrong." His grip tightened on Ethan's hand. "I'm so sorry," he said again. "For leaving you. For putting you in danger. For everything." Ethan cried quietly. "You shouldn't have gone," he whispered. "You said you'd come back. You never did. I waited until it was dark." Mark's face crumpled. "I know," he choked out. "I know, I thought. If I got them away from you, you'd be safe. I was wrong about that too." He looked over Ethan's shoulder at Jax, who had walked up and now stood nearby, breathing hard, chest heaving, eyes still on the men in cuffs. "You kept him alive," Mark said. Jax nodded once. "That was the job." "It's more than that," Mark replied. Paramedics rushed in now, pushing a stretcher between them. "Sir, we need you to lie down," one said. "I'm fine," Mark argued weakly. Then he winced when he tried to move. "You're not," the paramedic said. "You might have broken ribs. Could have internal injuries." Mark didn't look scared of that. He was scared of one thing only. He looked at Ethan again. "They're going to take me," he said quietly. "Police, hospital, then probably jail." Ethan shook his head violently. "No, I want you to stay with me." "I can't," Mark said. "Not this time. But you're not alone, okay?" He glanced at Jax again. Will you watch him?" Mark asked. "If they let you, if he wants it." Jax met Ethan's eyes. "Yeah," Jax said simply. "If he wants it. He has a place with us." Ethan nodded fast, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "I want it," he said. Mark smiled through the pain. "That's good," he whispered. That's really good." The paramedics carefully helped Mark onto the stretcher. He groaned, biting back a louder cry. Ethan gripped his hand until the last possible second. "Will I see you again?" Ethan asked. Mark's eyes shone. I don't know, he answered honestly. But I'll be alive because they didn't take you. That's enough for me. The stretcher began to move. Ethan walked beside it until they reached the edge of the square. Ruiz stepped in as the paramedics loaded the stretcher into the ambulance. I'll ride with him, she told Jax. I'll call you when I know his condition and what charges he's facing. Jax nodded. Ethan pressed both hands against the ambulance door as they closed it. His father lay inside, already strapped down, oxygen mask in place, eyes half closed. Dad, Ethan called. Mark turned his head weakly. I love you, Ethan said. Mark's lips moved under the mask. I love you too, kid, he mouthed. The doors shut. The ambulance drove away, lights flashing silently. Ethan stood there, arms dropping to his sides, watching the vehicle disappear around the corner. The square felt strangely empty, even though it was still full of people. Jax walked up behind him and rested a hand on his shoulder. You did good, Jax said softly. You were brave. I don't feel brave, Ethan said. I feel scared. So do I, Tank said, joining them. But I also feel something else. What? Ethan asked. Pissed off, Tank replied. Which is why we're going to make sure nobody tries this again. Karen approached, face pale but steady. Ethan, she said, I am so sorry you had to see that. But I'm glad you got to talk to him. That matters. Are they going to put him in jail? Ethan asked. Probably, she said gently. But he helped today. That will be in his file. And he's alive. That's something. Ethan nodded, wiping his face again. Am I still staying with them? He asked, motioning to Jax and Tank. Karen looked at Jax. You're still willing to take responsibility? She asked. More than ever, Jax said. Then yes, Karen said. You'll go back to the clubhouse tonight. Tomorrow we start the process for something more permanent. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Okay, he said. He took one last look at the now quieter square, the half-empty stalls, the shaken faces, the untouched Christmas tree that hadn't even been lit yet. This was supposed to be about Christmas, he said. Jax followed his gaze. Christmas isn't about the tree or the lights, Jax said. It's about who's still standing with you when everything goes wrong. Ethan looked up at him. Then I guess I got my Christmas wish, he said quietly. What was it? Tank asked. A family, Ethan answered. Tank sniffed. Well, now you're stuck with a bunch of bikers and a dog that snores. Diesel barked once as if to agree. Ethan almost laughed. Can we go home now? He asked. Yeah, Jax said. We're going home. They walked back toward the van together. Behind them, officers escorted Vargas's men into patrol cars, handcuffed, defeated for now. But as Ruiz watched them through the back window of the ambulance, she knew it wasn't really over. Vargas was still out there. The missing evidence was still out there. And the boy who knew nothing was still the center of it all. The square lights dimmed as they drove away. Tomorrow, the real fight for Ethan's future would begin, and the Steel Guardians would be ready for it. The clubhouse was quiet when they returned. Not the kind of quiet that meant peace. The kind that followed fear, heavy, tired, and full of things no one wanted to say out loud yet. Jax parked the van and looked over his shoulder. Ethan had fallen asleep against Tank, Diesel curled up on his lap like a warm blanket with paws. The boy's face was smudged from dried tears, cheeks still flushed from crying in the cold wind. He looked smaller than usual, but somehow stronger at the same time. Tank whispered, "Should I wake him?" Jax shook his head. "Let him rest. He's been through more in one day than most people handle in a year." Tank nodded and exhaled slowly. He held up, Jax. Better than any kid should have to. Better than many adults, Jax murmured. He stepped out of the van and opened the sliding door. Diesel lifted his head first, tail wagging tiredly. Tank eased Ethan into his arms, careful not to wake him. The boy stirred, eyes half opening as Jax lifted him. "You're okay," Jax whispered. We're home. Ethan nodded sleepily and rested his head on Jax's shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it hit Jax harder than anything else that night. Inside, the lights were low. A few bikers sat around the main room talking quietly, still processing everything that had happened. When they saw Ethan, they stood. No one spoke, but every man in that room straightened. A silent promise, carved in their stances. Nothing touches this kid again. Jax carried Ethan upstairs to his room, Diesel padding behind them. He laid him gently on the bed, pulled the blanket over him, and left a warm lamp on. Diesel curled up at the foot of the bed immediately, one eye open, as if declaring himself the night guard. Ethan mumbled, "Will he be here when I wake up?" Jax leaned forward. "Yeah, kid. We all will." Ethan's breathing slowed again. Jax closed the door most of the way, like Ethan liked it. Not open, not closed. Safe. Tank waited in the hallway. "He's sleeping?" he whispered. "Yeah." Tank rubbed a hand over his face. "Jax, we came close today. Too close." "I know. Vargas won't let this go." "I know." Tank frowned. "Then what do we do?" Jax didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because the answer was big. Bigger than one night, bigger than the club. Bigger than any of them expected when they found a freezing boy outside a toy store. He finally said, "Let's go downstairs." Karen Lewis returned at dawn. She must not have slept at all. Her eyes were red, her posture tense. But she stood tall as she walked through the clubhouse. Jax met her at the bottom of the stairs. Tank stood beside him. "Where is he?" she asked. "Sleeping," Jax said. "First real rest he's had in days." Karen nodded. "Good. He'll need the strength." Tank frowned. "What happened at the hospital? How bad is his dad?" Karen opened her folder. "Mark is in stable condition. 2 broken ribs, heavy bruising, a mild concussion. He didn't get stabbed thanks to Jackson Ruiz, but he's weak." "And the charges?" Jax asked. "Plenty," Karen said. "And serious, but—" She hesitated. "But what?" Tank asked. "His cooperation last night counts. His willingness to protect Ethan counts. And his injuries show he's been running from Vargas's men for some time. The judge will consider all of that." Ethan appeared on the stairs before anyone noticed he was awake. He wore one of Tank's oversized shirts again, hair messy from sleep, and Diesel nudged his legs down each step like a guardian. Karen turned instantly soft. "Ethan, honey, how are you feeling?" He shrugged. "Tired, hungry." Tank grinned. "That I can fix." He disappeared toward the kitchen. Ethan approached Karen slowly. "Did my dad wake up?" he asked. "Yes," she said gently. "I spoke to the officers who were with him. He asked about you." Ethan swallowed. "Is he going to jail?" Karen didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes, for a while, but not forever. And not today. He needs medical treatment first." Ethan's shoulders sagged, but the answer didn't crush him completely. He had seen his father alive, heard his voice, held his hand. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. "Can I see him?" Ethan whispered. "Not yet," Karen said softly. "Soon, I hope. But he's under protective watch right now." Ethan nodded. Jax stepped forward. "Karen, what about the boy's placement?" Karen lifted her folder. "I spoke with the judge early this morning. He reviewed the reports from yesterday." Tank returned with a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, setting it on the table before joining them again. Karen continued. "The judge agreed that moving Ethan to a foster center would be unsafe. Vargas's men would expect that. They'd look for him there. They'd look everywhere official." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Where will I go then?" Karen looked at Jax. "At least temporarily," she said. "You stay here." Ethan nearly dropped his plate. "Really?" Ethan whispered. Tank grinned. "Guess you're stuck with us, kid." Karen raised a finger. "This is probationary. We evaluate again in a few days, but for now the court believes the Steel Guardians have shown more commitment to protecting you than anyone else." Jax nodded deeply, a silent promise forming between him and the boy. Ethan blinked hard. I get to stay? For now, yes, Karen said. And if you want it, we'll make it longer. Ethan looked at Jax. I want it, he said instantly. Jax rested a hand on top of the boy's head. Then that's what we'll do. Karen closed her folder. There's one more thing, she said. After what happened yesterday, Ethan needs a guardian with legal authority, not just temporary supervision. Someone the court can trust. Someone officially responsible for his safety. Tank leaned back. That sounds like a whole lot of paperwork. Karen gave a small smile. It is. Ethan looked between them. Who would that be? Karen didn't hesitate. Jax. The room went utterly silent. Tank's eyebrows shot up. Diesel barked once as if agreeing. Jax blinked, stunned. Me? Karen nodded. You are the one he trusts. You're the one he listens to. You're the one who shielded him with your body yesterday. And according to Officer Ruiz, he didn't even scream until you told him he was safe. Ethan felt his heart pounding. Jax knelt in front of him. Is this what you want? He asked. Nobody's deciding for you, kid. You tell me. Ethan didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around Jax's neck. Yes, Ethan said into his shoulder. I want you. Jax closed his eyes for a moment. Tank cleared his throat loudly, pretending he wasn't emotional. Well, hell. Guess we gotta buy a kid-sized leather jacket now. Diesel barked again, tail wagging. Karen smiled. I'll start the paperwork today. It won't be immediate, but the process begins now. Ethan pulled back and wiped his face. Does that mean I live here? For now, Karen said, and maybe longer. Can I still see my dad? Ethan asked quietly. Yes, Karen said, when it's safe. Jax put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. We'll make sure of it. Ethan finally smiled, a real one. Small, crooked, but full of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Later that afternoon, the clubhouse looked different. Not physically, but emotionally. The bikers cleaned the place without being asked. Someone fixed the dents in the door. Someone hung new lights on the tree. Tank cooked enough breakfast food to feed an army. Diesel followed Ethan around like a shadow. Ethan helped carry plates to the table. He sat between Jax and Tank. He laughed when Diesel tried to steal toast. He asked questions about motorcycles. He told them about his favorite cartoon. For the first time since everything began, he looked like a kid again. Jax watched him quietly, arms crossed, leaning against the doorway. Tank nudged him. You're staring. Just making sure he's okay. He's more than okay, Tank said. You gave him something he didn't have. What? Tank shrugged. A place to land. Jax didn't respond, but Tank didn't need him to. When the meal was done, Ethan walked over to Jax and tugged on his vest. What's up? Jax asked. Can I go see the bikes again? Jax tilted his head. Yeah, I'll go with you. They walked outside together. The cold air bit their cheeks, but Ethan didn't mind. He walked straight to Jax's bike, the big black one with silver pipes and a worn leather seat. You rode on this yesterday, Jax said, and held on like a champ. Ethan ran a hand along the metal. Can I ride again someday? Jax smiled softly. Yeah, someday. A long silence settled between them. Then Ethan said, Thank you. For what? Jax asked. For not letting them take me, Ethan said, and for not leaving. Jax crouched beside him. I'll tell you something important, he said. Something you need to remember. Ethan looked up. You weren't left, Jax said. You were found. Ethan's eyes stung again, but not from sadness this time. From something warm, something safe, something like belonging. He climbed onto the bike seat, careful and slow, sitting the same way he had last night. Jax steadied him with a hand on his back. You know, Jax said, Christmas isn't over yet. Ethan smiled. What do you mean? Tank's voice boomed from the doorway. "Hey, kid! You might want to check under the tree." Ethan hopped off the bike and ran inside, Diesel racing beside him. Under the small artificial tree, a single box sat wrapped in red paper. It hadn't been there that morning. Ethan froze. He touched it carefully, then looked at Jax for permission. "Go on," Jax said softly. Ethan tore the wrapping paper away. Inside was a bright red fire truck, with a silver ladder, and blinking lights, and a sticker that said it made real siren sounds. Exactly the one from the store window. Ethan covered his mouth with both hands. Jax walked over slowly, kneeling down beside him. "He couldn't come back for you," Jax said. "So we went for you." Ethan threw his arms around him and hugged him so tight that Jax almost lost his balance. "I love it," Ethan whispered. "Thank you." Jax hugged him back. "You're home now," Jax whispered, "and we're not going anywhere." Tank sniffed loudly. "Dusty in here." Diesel barked in agreement. Karen watched from the door, smiling softly. For the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't feel scared. He didn't feel alone. He didn't feel like a kid waiting for someone who would never come. He felt chosen. He felt protected. He felt loved. The Steel Guardians weren't just bikers. They were his family now. And this Christmas, for the first time, Ethan was finally home.